Mr. President, honored guests, it's a great honor for me to be here this evening with all of you. I'm Nina Totenberg. Some of you may recognize me from television, but most of you probably recognize my voice and not my face from National Public Radio. We are assembled here at the Embassy of Israel in Washington, D.C., to award medals and certificates of honor of the righteous among the nations to the late Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds and the late Lois Gundin of the United States, and to the late Marila and Valerie Zbiewski of Poland, who risked their lives to rescue Jews during the Holocaust. Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Authority, was created by the State of Israel in order to gather all information about the Holocaust, to commemorate, document, preserve, research, and educate. When Yad Vashem was established, the Jewish people did not forget the non-Jews who stood by their side in the darkest hour of history, struggling with the enormity of the loss and grappling with the impact of the total abandonment and betrayal of Europe's Jews. The State of Israel made a point of remembering the rescuers. Thus, the law establishing Yad Vashem added yet another mission to pay tribute to the non-Jews who risked their lives to rescue Jews during the Holocaust. Since 1963, a public commission headed by an Israeli Supreme Court justice, I could say maybe that's why I'm here, but I don't think so, has been responsible for making the decision as to who will be recognized as righteous among the nations. This title is the highest honor that the State of Israel bestows on non-Jews in the name of the Jewish people. Our ceremony here today is unprecedented in that this is the very first time that American citizens are posthumously receiving righteous honors from Yad Vashem on American soil. I'm honored to invite to the stage our host, His Excellency Ron Dermer, Ambassador of Israel to the United States.
On behalf of the State of Israel, my wife Rhoda and I want to welcome all of you to the Israeli Embassy in Washington. I want to begin by expressing my profound thanks to you, President Obama, for being here tonight. Mr. President, your presence here on International Holocaust Remembrance Day is a powerful tribute to the memory of the victims, as well as a testament to the unique nature of this ceremony, in which we have come together to honor two Americans and two Poles who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Your presence is also a testament to the unique relationship between Israel and the United States. It is not every day, nor every year, nor even every decade that a sitting American president speaks at a foreign embassy. In fact, this is the first time that a sitting president has ever spoken in our embassy in Washington. So, Mr. President, I deeply appreciate the message of friendship that you are conveying by being here with us tonight. I want to welcome the chairman of Yad Vashem, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau. As a child, Rabbi Lau survived the Buchenwald concentration camp. He made Aliyah and would eventually become the chief rabbi of the State of Israel. I can think of few individuals who better personify the indomitable spirit of the Jewish people. I also want to welcome the chairman of the American Society of Yad Vashem, Leonard Wilf, who is a child of survivors. Mr. Wilf, I want to thank you and thank the entire Wilf family for everything that you have done to support the mission of Yad Vashem. I want to recognize someone else who is here tonight, who has done so much to preserve the memory of the Holocaust, and that is Steven Spielberg. Mr. Spielberg, thank you for using your prodigious talent to spread awareness of the Holocaust across the world and across the generations. And thank you for your remarkable work to preserve the memory of tens of thousands of survivors. Some of those survivors are here with us tonight, and I would like to ask them to stand for a moment and be recognized. Finally, I want to say something to the nearly 60 members of the Zbievsky, Gundin, and Edmonds families who were here. You know, the Jewish people are an ancient people with a very long memory. We forget neither our most wicked enemies nor our most righteous friends. Tonight, the names of your 4 esteemed relatives join the names of Oskar Schindler, Raoul Wallenberg, and other righteous among the nations to become a permanent part of our nation's heritage, to be remembered by our people for generations and generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, 71 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, we still try to make some sense of the Holocaust. We still try to learn some lesson that will shine light in the darkness. For some, the Holocaust represents the nadir of man's inhumanity to man. And its primary lesson is to be ever vigilant against racism, xenophobia, and intolerance. For others, the Holocaust shows what can happen when extremist ideologies come to power. And its primary lesson is to always safeguard the cornerstones of a free society that protect the rights of all. For me, the Holocaust was the attempt to wipe out the Jewish people. And its primary lesson is for the Jewish people to never be powerless against our enemies. That is why, like many Jews, I take great comfort in the rebirth of a sovereign Jewish state in our ancestral homeland, in the Jewish people once again having a voice, a refuge, and most important, the power to defend ourselves. But regardless of its meaning and its lessons, the Holocaust poses 2 difficult questions for all of us. Questions that challenge both our faith in God and our faith in man. First, how could a compassionate God allow the Holocaust to happen? Second, how could seemingly civilized societies produce so many individuals who could perpetrate such horrific crimes? In trying to grapple with these 2 questions, perhaps we should consider 2 other questions, 2 much older questions. They are 2 questions recorded in the Bible. They are the first question asked by God and the first question asked by man. After Adam and Eve disobey God in the Garden of Eden, we read that they hide in shame as they hear God's voice. Ayeka, where are you? God asks. The sages of the Jewish people teach us that where are you is not a question God is asking for his sake. It's a question God is asking for our sake. It is a question meant to spur introspection, to instill in us an appreciation that we are moral agents in the world, that we are responsible for the moral choices we make. Ladies and gentlemen, the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust were not the victims of an earthquake, a hurricane, or some other random natural disaster that would understandably turn our eyes to the heavens for answers. The 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust were murdered by other human beings. by human beings who had a choice. So perhaps the question, where are you? Ayeka. A question that so many asked God during the Holocaust, and which so many of us have been asking God ever since, is not a question for us to ask God, but a question for God to ask us. Where was man during the Holocaust? Where was the moral compass of the millions who simply looked the other way as the Nazis and their army of willing executioners perpetrated such monstrous evil? Rather than honestly confront this damning question, people instead tried to excuse their inaction. Too often they justified their failure to accept our moral obligations to one another by hiding behind another question. They answered the first question asked by God in the Bible with the first question asked by man in the Bible. It was the question asked by Cain after murdering Abel. Hashomer achi anochi. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here tonight to honor 4 people who were their brother's keeper. We are all here to honor 4 brave individuals who saw their actions not as an act of courage, but as their most fundamental moral obligation to their fellow man. And that is precisely what makes them true heroes. They are heroes not simply because they had an answer to Cain's question. They are heroes because they had an answer to God's question. To the question, Ayeka, where are you? These 4 had an answer. In an age of so much indifference, they acted. In an age of so much cowardice, they were courageous. In an age of so much darkness, they were a source of light. So in honoring these 4 righteous souls tonight, let us not only recognize their remarkable heroism, let us hope that their light will inspire us to live our lives so that we too will be able to give the right answers to those timeless questions, and in so doing, build a better future for all humanity. Thank you.
It's now my honor to call upon Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, Chairman of Yad Vashem Council and Holocaust Survivor.
President Barack Obama, we will never forget that Friday morning, your visit to Yad Vashem in Yerushalayim, joined by President of that time, Shimon Peres, and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Your remarks is unforgettable for us. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our host, Ambassador of Israel, Ron Dermer, and his wife, thank you for hosting the Yad Vashem, awarding the honorees of Righteous Among the Nations. All what we will say about you is nothing, is a zero. What you deserve for your families, knowing that your fathers or grandfathers did, not only for the Jewish people, but for mankind at all. You are a symbol that a man can be good even in an evil period of time. We were in that dark tunnel 6 years. I was in the city of Piotrków, where I was born, from Piotrków Trybunalski. The ambassador of Poland will know. The first ghetto located in Poland was in our city. Why? Don't ask me. The first. October 39 started the misery, the sufferings, the separating of families, the liquidation. In those 6 tunnels, 6 years, we thought that he conquered the whole world. Being later in Buchenwald, every day a new transport came. From where? From Hungary, from Romania, from Bulgaria, from Saloniki in Greece, from Tunisia, from Paris, from Belgium, Holland. So we inside, disconnected from media 6 years, didn't see a newspaper, didn't hear a voice of a radio, whatever. What did we think? That he conquered the whole world. And in this dark tunnel, there were some stars, the righteous among the nations. Stars. Many of us owe their lives, their survival, to those stars. There is a professor in Illinois University, Illinois, Kenneth Walshers. He found in Bad Arolsen, in the archives of the Gestapo near Berlin, a document. There is a prisoner of war, a Russian, by the name Fyodor Mikhailshchenko, from the city of Rostov-on-the-Don. He is risking his life in Barak number 8 in Buchenwald to rescue the life of a Jewish child. His nickname is Lulek, that's me. Why? You have to investigate. Maybe some Jewish blood is in his orders. Why is he doing it? Fyodor, 4 months, rescued his life to save me, risked his life. He was a star. And how many like this? From the whole world, we have about 26,000 names in Yad Vashem. After all the investigations, we found them that they earned the medal of righteous among the nations. 26,000 from a continent of so many millions of people. And they owed us a lot. Our doctors, our educators, our merchants, our industrials, whatever. 26,000, including Sugihara from Japan, and Raoul Wallenberg, and Oskar Schindler, Sweden, Germany, Poland. No more than 26,000 after 70 years. Mr. President, we have a long history speaking about righteous among the nations. Because as Ambassador Dermer have mentioned, we have a good memory. 3,300 years ago, we didn't have bread. There was no time to wait for bread. We ate matzahs. The same date, the 15th of Nisan, you attend us to the Seder Pesach. We have the Pesach, we eat matzahs. Over 3,300 years, the same menu. 4 glasses of wine, everything. And what a memory. 2,200 years about, we found some oil in the temple in time of Judah the Maccabee. Happy Hanukkah. You grace us. Happy Hanukkah. On the same day, the 25th of Kislev. Earlier to these 2 events, we had already a righteous among the nation. A Mengele order was given by King Pharaoh of Egypt. All the boys who are born to the Jewish people throw into the Nile. The girls to survive. Mengele. Right and left. Boys and girls. It's a kind of a final solution. There was a baby of 3 months put in a box on the Nile. His mother couldn't hide him anymore. And the daughter of Pharaoh, not a Jewish daughter, opened the box and said, this must be a Jewish child, a Jewish baby. She took him from the river, from the Nile, and he was brought up on the knees of her father, of Pharaoh. And he is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the first child survivor in mankind's history. And the daughter of Pharaoh is the first righteous among the nations. The daughter of the king who made the rule of final solution. She saved him. We will never forget. And I want to say one word. As far as we are unable and not authorized to forget the horror, we are ought to, we are commanded to remember the people who rescued their lives, who risked their lives to save us. We will never forget your deeds. We will never forget anyone who is assistance and helps for the immortality and the eternity of the Jewish people. Thank you.
Let me call to the stage now Leonard Wilf, who's chairman of the American Society for Yad Vashem.
Good evening, friends. It is a pleasure and an honor to address you on such an auspicious occasion. Mr. President, you truly honor Yad Vashem, the State of Israel, and our courageous heroes with your presence. Your participation, along with that of Ambassador Dermer and Rabbi Lau and Mr. Spielberg, underscores the significance and singularity of the event that will take place tonight. For that, we deeply thank you. In the first years after the Holocaust, when the Jewish people were still grappling with the aftermath of the horrors that they endured, there was an understanding that along with memorializing and documenting the mass murders and destruction, the Jewish people would honor and remember the unknown and silent heroes of the Shoah. These were the rarest of men and women who did not go along or stand silently by as their neighbors, friends, and countrymen were rounded up and targeted for death. At risk to their own and their families' lives, Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, Lois Gundin, and Valery and Marilla Zabieski were guided by a strong sense of morality to save Jewish children and adults, whose descendants and families are here tonight. In doing so, they are identified by Yad Vashem and the State of Israel as righteous among the nations, true exemplars of courage and heroism for us and our children. Many elements of this ceremony make it distinctive. It is the first time in history that an American president has joined with Yad Vashem and the State of Israel to honor United States citizens as righteous among the nations. It's also the first time that American citizens are being recognized on American soil. It is the first time that a U.S. soldier has been so recognized, and it is only the fourth and fifth time that Americans are being recognized as righteous among the nation. As the son of two Holocaust survivors, this event, with its bond to American citizens who demonstrated enormous acts of bravery to a Polish couple who saved a child who would go on to build a life in America, gives me a strong sense of pride. My family and I have dedicated ourselves to furthering Holocaust research and education, both in Israel and the United States. As chairman of the American Society for Yad Vashem, I am humbled by the great task to which we commit ourselves, to ensure that the world never forgets. Tonight, not only do we give honor to these incredible men and women, we also proclaim that despite the years that have passed, these stories carry timeless lessons for us all gathered here tonight, and indeed, for all humanity. Thank you again.
Now, if you would turn your attention to the video monitors on each side of the room for a video greeting from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
President Obama, Ambassador Dermer, Rhoda, former Chief Rabbi Lau, and all the family members whose relatives are being honored tonight. Today marks the 71st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Today we remember the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. We remember the 1.5 million Jewish children who never had a chance to grow up. Today is also a day when we can be especially grateful for the establishment of the State of Israel. The Jewish people were once powerless and stateless. Now we are again a sovereign, independent nation with a capacity to defend ourselves. But as we defend ourselves, we know that we do not stand alone. While Israel counts other nations as friends, we know we have no better friend than the United States of America. On behalf of the people of Israel, I want to thank you, President Obama, for coming to our embassy to mark this important occasion. And I thank you for your commitment to continue to work with us to bolster Israel's security over the coming decade. Your being here reflects the unbreakable bond of friendship between America and the Jewish state. And it's a worthy tribute to the 4 brave individuals whom we honor tonight. The Jewish people owe a profound debt of gratitude to Valerie and Marila Zibveski, to Louis Gundin, and to Master Sergeant Ronnie Edmonds. We are forever indebted to them because of the Jewish children and the Jewish soldiers who were saved thanks to their bravery. Their courage was a special courage. They not only risked their own lives, but the lives of their families and the life of their soldiers. There is no greater courage. God bless you all.
So as we turn to the presentation of the Righteous Among the Nations Honors Ceremony, I'd like to invite Ambassador Dermer and Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau to the stage. Yes? You coming to the stage? I think they have chairs for you. It is my honor as a cousin of Holocaust survivor Elizabeth Wilk to read the story of her rescue by Righteous Among the Nations Marila and Valerie Zbiewski in Poland. On July 22, 1942, the Germans began the mass deportations from the Warsaw Ghetto. By September 21st, Yom Kippur, some 260,000 inhabitants of the ghetto had been deported to the Treblinka extermination camp where they were murdered. Janina Totenberg-Förster and her daughter Elżbieta managed to flee from the ghetto and to go into hiding. I'm actually named after my aunt Janina because my father thought by the end of the war when I was born that she was dead. My aunt and her daughter stayed for 2 months at the home of acquaintances Tadeusz and Eugenia Kucharski. My aunt then brought her daughter to the home of Valerie and Marila Zbiewski until my aunt was able to rent an apartment under a false name and take her daughter back. Despite the enormous danger, the Germans publicly announced that helping Jews would be punished by death. The Zbiewskis cared for Elżbieta and protected her until her mother was able to take her. At this time, I'd like to call upon Dr. Wojtek Zbiewski of Johns Hopkins Medical School, grandson of the late Marila and Valerie Zbiewski, Righteous Among the Nations from Poland, to receive the Medal and Certificate of Honor. So now, let me introduce my cousin Elżbieta, a.k.a. Elżunia, a.k.a. Elizabeth Wilk, who was rescued in Poland by the we will get this right, Zbiewskis.
I'm here today because of acts of tolerance, kindness, and heroism. When the war started, I was not even 3 years old. During the time of the Nazi occupation of Poland, the atmosphere in Warsaw was that of fear, menace, and terror. When Jews were ordered to move to Warsaw Ghetto, my parents and I did so in spite of urging by friends with offers of help. My father said that he will go where his people go. He died there at the age of 41. My mother and I were helped by Polish underground to escape from the ghetto. Once outside, we didn't know where to go. My mother knocked at the apartment door of Kucharski's friends from before the war, who took us in without hesitation. We stayed with them until bombardment destroyed their house. We did not have a place to live, and my mother slept one night here and one night there. She feared for my safety. She turned to Maryla and Valery Zbiewski, also friends from before the war. The Zbiewski took me into their home, and I stayed there for some time with them and their children, and I do not know how my mother managed during this time. On posts everywhere, there were notices by occupiers that anyone who fed a Jew, knew about a Jew in hiding, and didn't report it or hid a Jew would be executed together with their entire family. There was always a possibility that someone might notice something, or a child might say one word too many. These families who helped were in mortal peril. We survived the war because of people like them and others, some of whose names I cannot even know. In time of an unspeakable horror, they all showed heroism and humanity in the highest sense of the word. History repeats itself, and I am frightened by aggression, hatred, and a lack of tolerance. We cannot forget our humanity and the lessons of the past. Thank you.
I now invite to the stage Mark Kalish, son of Holocaust survivor Jeanette Drucker-Kalish, who is here with us this evening to read the story of her rescue by Righteous Among the Nations from the United States of America, Lois Gundin.
1941, Lois Gundin, a 26-year-old teacher of French from Goshen, Indiana, volunteered to work for the Mennonite Central Committee in southern France. She established a children's home in Canet-Plage, which became a safe haven for a number of children, including Jews whom she helped smuggle out of the nearby Rive-Salt internment camp. There, Lois pleaded with the parents to give up their children and give them to her in order to save them from deportation and almost certain death. Jeanette Drucker-Kalish, my mother, who is with us tonight, is just one of the several children saved by Lois. My mother told Yad Vashem, "At the time I was 12 years old and certainly scared, but Lois Gundin was kind and passionately determined to take me and other Jewish children to protect us from harm." Gundin fearlessly sheltered the children when the French police arrived at Cannes-Plage. And she ran the children's home even after the United States entered the war, and she herself became an enemy alien. She continued her work until January 1943, when she was detained by the Germans, fortunately to be released in 1944 in a prisoner exchange. I, my sister Elizabeth, and Jeanette's grandson Eric are all here today representing the scores of Jewish descendants of the children Lois saved. Through Lois, we abound in gratitude to the Gundin family. Thank you.
I'm honored now to call upon Ms. Mary Jean Gundin, niece of the late Lois Gundin, righteous among the nations from the United States of America, to receive the Medal and Certificate of Honor and to offer some remarks.
On behalf of my late aunt, Lois Mary Gundin, her family, friends, and her broader Mennonite community, I express our deep gratitude to Yad Vashem and the people of Israel for this great honor. Our family was blessed to have Lois among us. She possessed an inspiring spiritual dignity and grace. Humble about her many achievements, we knew little about her wartime activities. Her fluency in French allowed her to communicate with the 60 children in the home and their parents. Lois was grateful for every opportunity to, in her words, add just another ray of love to the lives of these youngsters who have already experienced so much of the misery of life. From contact with other relief workers from organizations such as the American Friends Service Committee, or AFSC, and the Jewish organization OSE, Lois knew the dangers her children faced. After a visit from her colleague from the AFSC on August 9, 1942, she wrote, "Mary Elms informed me of the return of Polish and German Jews to Poland, where death by starvation awaits them. Learning that 3 children sought by police had been saved from deportation on September 3, 1942, she wrote, when I heard of how the Landesman children were finally snatched from the fate hanging over them, I felt as if God must have had a hand in preventing anyone from coming after them during these 2 days. Had they been taken to camp, all efforts to save them would have arrived too late for any good." Marking a year in Vichy on October 31st, 1942, she wrote, "But my year's experience in relief work has taught me more than ever that one has to live one day at a time. God's faithfulness towards those who put their trust in him can be counted upon throughout the particular problems of the day. Without the assurance of his abiding presence and his sustaining help, I would feel lost in an impossible tangle of circumstances." Lois refused an offer by the resistance to leave France and avoid German detention. She, a pacifist, would not risk physical danger to those helping her, nor others that might be harmed in retaliation. This young woman, not much older than the children she strove to save, is truly an American hero.
I'm honored now to call upon Lester Tanner, who will tell the story of how he and his fellow POWs were rescued by Righteous Among the Nations from the United States of America, Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds.
Good evening. I am honored tonight to present this narrative of my commander and my friend. Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds of Knoxville, Tennessee, participated in the landing of the American forces in Europe and was taken prisoner by the Germans. In January 1945, the Germans ordered all Jewish inmates in the Stalag 9A POW camp to report the following morning. Understanding the imminent danger in which this would place his fellow Jewish prisoners like myself, Master Sergeant Edmonds ordered all the POWs, Jews and non-Jews alike, to report together. When the German officer in charge, he was Major Siegmann, saw that all the camp's inmates standing in front of the barracks, he said, "They cannot all be Jews." I remember standing by his side when Edmonds retorted, "We are all Jews." Edmonds did not waver even when the German took out his pistol and threatened to shoot him. "According to the Geneva Convention," said Edmonds, "we have to give you only our name, rank, and serial number." "If you shoot me, you will have to shoot all of us, because we know who you are, and after the war, you will be tried for war crimes." The German finally gave up and left the scene. And the Jewish POWs were saved from certain death. Roddy could no more have turned 200 of his men over to Nazi persecution than he could stop breathing. My fellow POW who is with us tonight, Paul Stern. Raise your hand, Paul. Paul was one of the Jewish POWs saved by Roddy Edmonds, and he recalled, "Although 71 years have passed, I can still hear the words he said to the German camp commander." According to Edmonds' diary, these events took place on January 27, 1945, 71 years ago today. And tonight, my comrade Paul Stern is celebrating his 92nd birthday. I would also like you to meet one of my other comrades. He's actually the kid among us. He celebrated his 90th birthday last August at Sardi's. Sergeant Erwin Fox. Would you stand up, Sonny? Sonny's actually a TV star. He was president of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And at 90, he's still a consultant. Thanks to Roddy for saving us. And thank you. God bless America.
All I can say is I want to look like these guys when I'm 90. I'm very honored to call upon American pastor Chris Edmonds, son of the late Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, righteous among the nations from the United States of America, to receive the Medal and Certificate of Honor on behalf of his father and to offer some remarks.
Lester, you did good. Thank you. Ambassador Dermer, Mr. President, might I say it's an incredible honor to have you here. It's one memory that our family will cherish always. And might also say it's my first time speaking at the embassy as well. Rabbi Lau, Mr. Whiff, Senator Alexander, Senator Corker, the Gundon family. I'm going to mess this up. I'm from Tennessee. Say it for me. Biefsky family. Biefsky family. There we go. I'll get it right next time. And distinguished guest. Tonight on this noble occasion, my mother, Mary Ann, who could not be with us, and my family are blessed to receive this remarkable honor, righteous among the nations, on behalf of my father, Roddy Edmonds. Thank you, Yad Vashem and the nation of Israel, for our treasured friendship and for bestowing your richest and highest honor on Dad. As the first U.S. serviceman to receive the award and the first recognized for protecting American Jews, our family is forever grateful. More personally, our family extends warmest thanks to our dear friends Larry and Barbara Goldstein, who shared Dad's story with Yad Vashem, and they could not be here tonight as well. Being named among the righteous is a fitting tribute to Dad, a man who lived by a sincere Christian faith and an infectious love for everyone. We're very proud of him, and we're humbled that he joins a small minority of ordinary people who mustered extraordinary courage to uphold the goodness and dignity of humanity. My dad, like Miss Gundon and the Biefskis, are heroes. In a defining moment, when evil demanded their conscience and even their very souls, they refused to join the masses, but instead bowed to no one and chose what is right, regardless of the risk. Choosing right by their Creator and right for God's children. What they did is right today. It's right tomorrow. It's right always. As we honor these enduring lives, it's especially fitting that you have favored Dad on January 27th, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. For as Lester shared, on this day 71 years ago, my dad fearlessly stood with his Jewish and non-Jewish brothers and told the Nazi commander, "We are all Jews here." We're blessed to know Dad's story and blessed by his actions, but most blessed to know some of the men he saved. Remarkably, you've met them. They've joined us tonight, along with their beautiful families, and their 3 Jewish American veterans who stood strong and defiant with Dad that bitterly cold January morning. Staff Sergeant Lester Tanner of New York, Tech Sergeant and Medic Paul Stern of Virginia. Happy birthday, sir. And Sergeant Sonny Fox of California. 2 men who were unable to attend but wishing us well are Tech Sergeant Hank Friedman of Georgia and Tech Sergeant Skip Friedman of Ohio. And we must always remember the 1,200 courageous and defiant doughboys of the U.S. Army who stood in sharp formation that day with these heroic men and my father. All are heroes. Gentlemen, we salute you. Thank you for a job well done. My father's legacy, like all of the righteous, are the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren of these men. I'm often asked, why would your father do what he did? And Dad would say, son, what's all the fuss? I was just doing my job. But I say Dad's life was guided by one eternal truth, that there is a God, and that God is good. And God's love, though free, has one essential responsibility. We must be good to one another. Or as Jesus proclaimed, we must love one another. And that's what Dad did, along with these others who are being honored tonight. And they leave an enduring legacy, along with the tribe we call the righteous. Their actions were founded on God's love and the extraordinary idea that all men and women are created equal. Tonight we celebrate them because they acted on that idea. And though we honor them with words, nothing honors them more than their actions. Our duty now is to take strength from their example and resolve to live as they did, laying down one's life for freedom and human dignity. God's word says this: the godly people in the land are my true heroes. I take pleasure in them. Gratefully, we do too. Thank you. May God richly bless all of you with his grace and his mercy.
It's my great honor now to call upon USC Shoah Foundation founder and Academy Award-winning director and producer Steven Spielberg, who will introduce the President of the United States of America.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina, and good evening, Mr. President, Ambassador Dermer, Rabbi Lau, the families of the righteous among nations who we honor today, and the families of those saved by these righteous souls, and distinguished guests. I'm humbled to be part of this historic gathering, particularly given the significance that this is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I am here tonight to introduce my good friend, President Obama. Now, in these times with humanity worldwide, when humanity is buffeted by crisis after crisis, when the need for redemptive action has never been more urgent, I was very eager to join you here in Washington to commemorate the righteous among the nations. Many of those in attendance today are here because of courageous acts. The descendants of victims and survivors, second and third generations, they make a significant portion of world Jewry today. L'Ador Vador is from generation to generation. And these in particular, I think, are a living testament to the love of humankind and the refusal to become complicit in evil that drove the righteous to risk their own lives to save Jews. We gather tonight to honor 4 righteous persons: Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, Louis Gundin, and Valerie and Marella Zibievsky. Zbieski. I practiced that the whole way here. When we remember and honor the selflessness and bravery and loving kindness of the righteous among nations, we are actually committing our lives to their legacies by promising simply to listen to their stories, because they can help us find our voices. I found my own voice at a very early age where I was barely able to reach the top of the dining room table, from where I could watch my grandmother teaching Hungarian Holocaust survivors English. There was no Sesame Street back then, but I learned my numbers on the forearms of survivors of Auschwitz. They taught me how to count. This is an indelible memory, and it set me on the path as a person who began to listen to everything. And I have always believed you can't find your own voice for speaking on behalf of the world or speaking against those who would destroy the world if you can't hear what the world is saying. And with that in mind, I wanted to make a film about the importance of not being a bystander as history passes close to you, giving all of us a chance to do something before it passes us by. And so that film was Schindler's List. Oskar Schindler, as you know, one of the righteous among the nations, saved more than 1,100 Jews and made life possible for their offspring. From that film came the Shoah Foundation, now the USC Shoah Foundation, the Institute for Visual History and Education, which houses more than 53,000 survivors and witnesses' testimonies in 39 languages gathered from 63 countries, ensuring that we will never stop listening, that their stories will live on for future generations, and their voices preserved in perpetuity. And now it is a great honor for me to introduce to you a man who truly understands what it means to find your voice. Time and again, he has honored the memories of the victims and survivors of the Shoah by lifting up their stories and by standing firm against bigotry and hatred that fuels violence and genocide. In 2014, I was privileged to present President Obama with the USC Shoah Foundation's Ambassador for Humanity Award. And that night, the president quoted Holocaust survivor Pinchas Gutter, who works to improve the world drop by drop by drop. And I believe that, too, is the president's lifelong mission. It's why some have said that this president has a Jewish soul. He showed this when he created the Atrocities Prevention Board and when he declared the prevention of mass atrocities a national security interest. He demonstrates this in his steadfast support for the state of Israel at a time when Israel has many enemies and when anti-Semitism focuses its hatred on a nation that emerged in the wake of tragedy to offer hope and a future for the Jewish people. The president's support is needed and appreciated more than ever. And in his commitment to seek a humanitarian response to the Syrian refugee crisis, and every time he stands up for people who have been attacked because of their identity and denounces anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, and hatred in every form, he demonstrates that never again means we cannot be bystanders when people are stigmatized, oppressed, excluded, or attacked because of their identity. The president makes sure that phrase, never again, is not a hollow declaration by giving it a powerful voice in his everyday life. So it means a great deal to have the President of the United States take part in the first Righteous Among the Nations ceremony to be held on U.S. soil at the Embassy of Israel. And it's my distinct privilege to introduce my good friend and President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Erev Tov. The Talmud teaches that if a person destroys one life, it is as if they've destroyed an entire world. And if a person saves one life, it is as if they've saved an entire world. What an extraordinary honor to be with you as we honor 4 righteous individuals whose courage is measured in the lives they saved. 1 child, 1 refugee, 1 comrade at a time, and who, in so doing, helped save our world. I deliver a lot of speeches. Very rarely am I so humbled by the eloquence that has preceded me. Not just in words, but in the acts that we commemorate today. To my dear friend, Steven Spielberg, thanks for your moving and generous words. You spoke of the importance of finding your voice and using it for good, and I know that your work, whether a masterpiece like Schindler's List or the stories that you have so persistently preserved through the Shoah Foundation, is deeply personal. Stephen once said that the story of the Shoah is the story that he was born to tell, rooted in those childhood memories that he just gave you a taste of, the relatives lost, the stories you heard from your family. And Stephen, the whole world is grateful that you found your voice and for the good that you've done with that voice. It will endure for generations. And so on behalf of all of us, we are grateful. To Ambassador and Mrs. Dermer, to Nina Totenberg, our friends from the Israeli Embassy and Yad Vashem, thank you so much for hosting us today. Let me just add tonight that our thoughts are also with former Israeli President Shimon Peres. I had the opportunity to speak with Shimon earlier this week. I thanked him for his friendship, which has always meant so much to me personally, and I thanked him once again for the shining example of his leadership with his extraordinary life in the Haganah and as a founding father of the State of Israel, a statesman who's never given up on peace, an embodiment of the great alliance between our two nations. Shimon inspires us all, and this evening we speak for all of us, Israelis, Americans, people around the world, in wishing him a full and speedy recovery. I also want to just note the presence of 2 of our outstanding senators from the great state of Tennessee. I know that it's rare where you have such an extraordinary native of the state being honored in this way, but I think it's also worth noting that this represents the bipartisan and steadfast support of members of Congress for the security and prosperity of the state of Israel, and they act on that every single day. The survivors, families of the righteous, and those they saved, to all the distinguished guests, we gather to honor the newest of the righteous among the nations and make real the call to never forget, not just on this day of remembrance, but for all days and for all time. And at moments like this, as I listen to the extraordinary stories of the 4 that we honor, memories come rushing back of the times that I've encountered the history and the horror of the Shoah. Growing up, hearing the stories of my great uncle who helped liberate Ohrdruf, part of Buchenwald, and who returned home so shaken by the suffering that he had seen that my grandmother would tell me he did not speak to anyone for 6 months, just went up in his attic. Couldn't fully absorb the horror that he had witnessed. Then having the opportunity to go to Buchenwald myself with my dear friend Elie Wiesel and seeing the ovens, the little camp where he was held as a boy, standing with survivors in the old Warsaw Ghetto, and then the extraordinary honor of walking through Yad Vashem with Rabbi Lau and seeing the faces and hearing the voices of the lost of blessed memory. And then taking my own daughters to visit the Holocaust Museum, because our children must know this chapter of our history and that we must never repeat it. The four lives we honor tonight make a claim on our conscience as well as our moral imagination. We hear their stories and we are forced to ask ourselves, under the same circumstances, how would we act? How would we answer God's question, where are you? Would we show the love of Valerie and Marilla Zabievsky? Not bad, right? There in Warsaw, they could have been shot for opening their home to a 5-year-old girl that they cared for like one of their own, gave her safety and shelter and moments of warmth, with family and music, a shield from the madness outside until her mother could return. Would we have the extraordinary compassion of Lois Gundin? She wrote that she simply hoped to add just another ray of love to the lives of these youngsters who had already endured so much. And by housing and feeding as many Jewish children as she could, her ray of love always shone through and still burns within the families of those she saved. Would we have the courage of Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds? I know your dad said he was just doing his job, but he went above and beyond the call of duty, and so did all those who joined in that line. Faced with a choice of giving up his fellow soldiers or saving his own life, Roddy looked evil in the eye and dared a Nazi to shoot. His moral compass never wavered. He was true to his faith, and he saved some 200 Jewish American soldiers as a consequence. It's an instructive lesson, by the way, for those of us Christians. I cannot imagine a greater expression of Christianity to say, I too am a Jew. And I ask these questions because even as the Holocaust is unique, a crime without parallel in history, the seeds of hate that gave rise to the Shoah, the ignorance that conspires with arrogance, the indifference that betrays compassion, those seeds have always been with us. They have found root across cultures and across faith and across generations. The ambassador mentioned the story of Cain and Abel. It's deep within us. And too often, especially in times of change, especially in times of anxiety and uncertainty, we are too willing to give into a base desire to find someone else, someone different, to blame for our struggles. So here tonight, we must confront the reality that around the world, anti-Semitism is on the rise. We cannot deny it. And when we see some Jews leaving European cities where their families have lived for generations because they no longer feel safe, when Jewish centers are targeted from Mumbai to Overland Park, Kansas, when swastikas appear on college campuses, when we see all that and more, we must not be silent. An attack on any faith is an attack on all of our faiths. It is an attack on that golden rule at the heart of so many faiths, that we ought to do unto others as we would have done to us. For Americans in particular, we should understand that it's an attack on our diversity, on the very idea that people of different backgrounds can live together and thrive together. Which is why your father was right. We are all Jews. Because anti-Semitism is a distillation, an expression of an evil that runs through so much of human history. And if we do not answer that, we do not answer any other form of evil. When any Jew anywhere is targeted just for being Jewish, we all have to respond as Roddy Edmonds did. We are all Jews. We know that we'll never be able to wipe out hatred from every single mind. We won't entirely erase the scourge of anti-Semitism. But like the righteous, we must do everything we can. All of us have a responsibility. Certainly government has a responsibility. As president, I've made sure that the United States is leading the global fight against anti-Semitism. And it's why, with Israel and countries around the world, we organized the first United Nations General Assembly meeting on anti-Semitism. It's why we've urged other nations to dedicate a special envoy to this threat, as we have. It's why when a statue of an anti-Semitic leader from World War II was planned in Hungary, we led the charge to convince their government to reverse course. This was not a side note to our relations with Hungary. This was central to maintaining a good relationship with the United States, and we let them know. It's why when voices around the world veer from criticism of a particular Israeli policy to an unjust denial of Israel's right to exist, when Israel faces terrorism, we stand up forcefully and proudly in defense of our ally, in defense of our friend, in defense of the Jewish state of Israel. America's commitment to Israel's security remains now and forever unshakable. And I've said this before, it would be a fundamental moral failing if America broke that bond. All nations that prize diversity and tolerance and pluralism must speak out whenever and wherever Jews and other religious minorities are attacked. And in recent years, we've seen leaders in France, Germany, and Great Britain stand strongly against anti-Semitism. In Israel, President Rivlin has spoken eloquently about the need for tolerance and acceptance among all Israelis, Jewish and Arab. Meanwhile, governments have an obligation to care for the survivors of the Shoah, because no one who endured that horror should have to scrape by in their golden years. So with our White House initiative, we're working to improve care for Holocaust survivors in need here in the United States. And with the compensation fund we helped create, claims are finally being paid that even more Jews deported from France during the Holocaust, including survivors here in America, can benefit from. But the task before us does not fall on government alone. Every faith community has a responsibility. And just as all religions speak out against those who try to twist their faith to justify terrorism and violence, just as all faiths need to speak out when interpretations of their religion veer in an ugly direction, so too must they speak out against those who use their faith to justify bias against Jews or people of any faith. We know that there were Muslims, from Albanians to Arabs, who protected Jews from Nazis. In Morocco, leaders from Muslim-majority countries around the world just held a summit on protecting religious minorities, including Jews and Christians. His Holiness Pope Francis has spoken forcefully against anti-Semitism, saying every human being as a creature of God is our brother regardless of his origins or religious beliefs. These are the voices we must heed. And anyone who claims to be a religious leader must project that vision, that truth. And finally, all of us have a responsibility to speak out and to teach what's right to our children and to examine our own hearts. That's the lesson of the righteous we honor today, the lesson of the Holocaust itself. Where are you? Who are you? That's the question that the Holocaust poses to us. We have to consider, even in moments of peril, even when we might fear for our own lives, the fact that none of us are powerless. We always have a choice. And today, for most of us, standing up against intolerance doesn't require the same risks that those we honor today took. It doesn't require imprisonment or that we face down the barrel of a gun. It does require us to speak out. It does require us to stand firm. We know that evil can flourish if we stand idly by. And so we're called to live in a way that shows that we've actually learned from our past. And that means rejecting indifference. It means cultivating a habit of empathy and recognizing ourselves in one another, to make common cause with the outsider, the minority, whether that minority is Christian or Jew, whether it is Hindu or Muslim, or non-believer, whether that minority is native-born or immigrant, whether they're Israeli or Palestinian. It means taking a stand against bigotry in all its forms and rejecting our darkest impulses and guarding against tribalism as the only value in our communities and in our politics. It means heeding the lesson repeated so often in the Torah, to welcome the stranger, for we were once strangers too. That's how we never forget. Not simply by keeping the lessons of the Shoah in our memories, but by living them in our actions. As the book of Deuteronomy teaches us, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. I want to close with what I'm told is a Jewish legend. It's said that within every generation there are 36 virtuous individuals. Individuals so honorable, so filled with compassion, that their good works sustain the very existence of the world. They are called Lamed Vaniks. And without them, society crumbles, according to the legend. We don't know who they are. They're entirely indistinguishable, ordinary people, like Valerie and Meir Lau and Lois and Roddy. You wouldn't necessarily recognize them in a crowd. But I believe that their generation, the generation of Schindler and Wallenberg and Karski, demanded a lot more than 36. They called for more than 26,000 righteous among the nations. It called for the millions of heroes who did not go quietly and who stood up and fought back. And may we all strive to live up to their noble example, to be the Lamed Vaniks of our generation, to do our part to sustain each other and to embrace the humanity that we share, and in so doing, save our world. May the memory of the lost be a blessing, and as nations and individuals, may we always strive to be among the righteous. God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the state of Israel.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay in your places for a few minutes. Thank you very much, one and all, for participating in tonight's ceremony. We invite you to join us in the tent for the buffet afterwards. And it's been my great privilege to be here with you this evening. Thank you. I think you better hold on for just another minute or two. Until somebody gives me the high sign. Just stay in your places for a minute or two.